Okay guys, so I'm here in Osaka, Japan, looking at the brand new Lumix S9. And what I thought I would go ahead and do for you guys, just to make this really easy, is I just let you know the top 5 things that you need to know about this camera before you buy it. So without any further ado, let's jump into the first thing. So the first thing to know about the Lumix S9 is that it's going to be using the exact same sensor from the Lumix S5 Mark II. What does that mean? That means you're gonna be getting full frame 6K in open gate with this tiny little S9 camera. This is going to be particularly interesting because you're getting all of the same spec performances, but in this tiny $1,500 body. Open gate being particularly useful with this camera because they are advertising it as a content creation camera, and this camera is going to allow you to film for both horizontal as well as vertical content at the same time using open gate, which is pretty exciting. Now, I think they understood that a lot of people aren't necessarily gonna wanna be shooting in 6K all the time for content creation, so they do allow you to shoot in this 4K light open gate mode. For myself, that's not something that I particularly want to do very often, but it is in here and it's going to take way less space on your memory cards and on your phone. And again, because it is the same sensor and processor as the S5 Mark II, you can also shoot in an X-Pan mode or a 65:24 aspect ratio. Now, this is going to only be for photography, but for me, this unlocked a certain inspiration for photography. In fact, I have an entire video on this camera for photography if you want to check out that video. This video is brought to you by SkillShare. And to make it interesting, this ad will be filmed with the Lumix S9 with that 10-minute record limit on the Blazar 85 Kato. So if you want to check out the image quality of the Katos and or the S9 shooting 6K open gate, well, stick around. So something that I've wanted to get better at for my video creation is typography, really understanding why certain fonts should or should not be chosen for particular projects. And I know that doesn't sound super major, but I do think that it's something important that I need to know for what I do. So I just searched up typography and I ended up finding Jeremy Mura, I hope I say your name right, and he's a brand and web designer on SkillShare. And honestly, his class was awesome. For it only being an hour long, I really do feel like I learned a lot. And additionally, he provided a lot of online resources that can definitely help me find the fonts that I need for my YouTube channel. But that's far from all SkillShare has to offer. They have thousands of classes made by creators to help you learn pretty much anything. Guys, if you're trying to learn a new skill for work or just maybe want to try something new over the summer, definitely check out SkillShare. The first 500 people to sign up using my link will get 1 whole month free, which is definitely enough time to get you going. Thanks again to SkillShare for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to the Lumix S9, which has been filming me this whole time, and I haven't had to cut once. Maybe that record limit isn't quite so bad. One of the most unique things about the Lumix S9 is how it's going to be integrating LUTs into this camera. Now, typically LUTs are used for video, but you're actually able to use LUTs now for photography. And it's not just like you're essentially getting a kind of an interesting look out of this camera. You're more or less pre-editing your photos before you even shoot them. So using their new Lumix Lab app, if you have a photo that you can upload from the camera to your phone, you can edit off of that photo to get a desired look that you want. You're able to change all your basic stuff like your white balance, your saturation levels, your light levels, but you're also able to do other things like change your tone curves or the HSLs. And that is what unlocks this camera into making more of these film looks or these photo looks rather than it just being like an Instagram preset. And honestly, that's all I've been doing since I've been in Japan. I've been crafting my own LUTs and then just walking around and shooting what I see. And the best part about this workflow is that I've never had a faster shoot to upload experience. I don't have to upload all these photos into my computer, edit them in Lightroom, and then airdrop them back to my phone to then upload to Instagram. Just too many things, and oftentimes I end up not posting anything at all. Now all I have to do is go take some photos, they're already edited, and then I drop them to my phone using the Lumix Lab app, and then they're on Instagram within 30 seconds. So this new LUT-based thing, it's a bit confusing if I'm being honest, but once you figure it out, it's pretty game-changing. And one important thing I forgot to mention, you are able to have up to 39 of these different custom LUTs, and they can be your own, they can be your buddies, and they just airdrop them to you, or you can even go into the creator page if you want to just explore and see what other creators have made in the Lumix Lab app. It's honestly a feature that I feel like every camera should have in the future. The next thing to talk about is going to be the overall design of this camera. So the S9 definitely favors a photography aesthetic. It almost looks like an M11 camera. I do like the compact design of the S9. It does have a fully articulating flip screen, and it feels solid enough, which we always love flip screens, especially for content creation cameras. But there are a few things that they sacrificed when they designed the S9. First and foremost being that there's no viewfinder. And honestly, it has been so annoying to not have a viewfinder on this camera that just feels like a photographer's camera. It looks like a photographer's camera, but then there's no viewfinder. It's not necessarily the biggest deal in the world. You can totally still shoot amazing photos with this camera, but the fact that there's no viewfinder is definitely annoying. Another thing to note is that with the sensor, another design choice they made is that it only has an electronic shutter. There's no mechanical shutter. Now, if you don't understand why that's important, basically if you're photographing anything that's moving fast, you're going to have this weird slanted distortion to all of those photos. It's not, again, the biggest deal, but it's something that they sacrificed when they made the S9 to keep the cost down. Also, the grip here on the side of the camera does not come with the camera. This is a small rig grip for the S9, and honestly, some sort of a grip does feel necessary. Without it, it's just a smooth surface. There ain't nothing to grab onto except for this little thumb grip on the back here, which is nice. But yeah, I do feel like a grip of some sort is going to be required. I do, however, like that with these cameras, they do come in these fun colors. I maybe would have picked different colors. I went with the green one. There's also a red, a blue, and a black one. The black one actually looks quite nice. But yeah, I would have probably picked a little bit different colors, maybe like a brown, like a leather brown. That would have been cool. Editing Connor here. I know that this is a top 5 video, but I'm gonna give you a little bit more because I do think there's other things that you should definitely know about the Lumix S9 before you buy that I totally whiffed on while I was in Japan. First and foremost is that you are going to have different record limits on this camera. So if you're going to be filming YouTube videos, I'm actually filming on the S9 right now. While I do this thing, I do have exactly 10 minutes to record before I have to start and stop the record again when shooting in the 6K open gate mode, which I'm doing right now. In some of the 4K modes, you get 15 minutes, and then I think in 1080p, you get 20 minutes. Now, I hope that they can change this because I don't think that the overheating is going to be too much of an issue with the S9. If I'm being 100% honest, it seems like it holds pretty well. We'll just have to play that by ear. So there are record limits in this camera. Another thing to know about this camera that actually came into play while we were filming a little short documentary is that there is no headphone jack. There is a microphone jack, so you can record audio. I'm doing that right now into the camera with my little, Rode microphone. That's great. But there's no way to monitor it in the camera directly. There's other ways, like with certain microphones, you can plug directly into the microphone and monitor, but in the camera, there's no headphone jack. And then lastly, I don't know that people are gonna use the camera this way very often, but if you are gonna put a monitor on the Lumix S9, you're gonna have to do that through a micro HDMI port, kind of similar to how Canon does it with all of their cameras. It's a micro HDMI port. Not my favorite, but it does work. It's just, again, I don't know that anyone's gonna really use this camera that way, but if you intend to, just know you got to get micro HDMI cables. So anyways, those are just a few extra things that I feel like you should definitely know before you even consider purchasing the Lumix S9. So surprisingly, something about this camera is that it is able to have anamorphic support. Now, anamorphic support seems a little bit weird in a camera of this size, but honestly, we're dealing with Lumix and they're not about to take out features that it's totally capable of. And I think because it is the S5 Mark II sensor and processor, they're like, might as well just tuck it in. But this actually allows this to be the smallest anamorphic setup that you can possibly have. I imagine mixing this with the Blazar Remuses would be particularly interesting. I actually have the Blazar Katos with me on this trip, and I was able to do a mini dock with Cam Mackey. We'll have a collab about that coming soon, so definitely subscribe so you don't miss out on that video. So I don't know if you guys will think that this last point is a cop-out, but honestly, the S9 is just fun. I've had an absolute blast walking around Japan, just getting different photo clips and using it with anamorphic lenses. This is not typically how I would use any other camera, so it is kind of unique in that way. I do think that that 65:24 aspect ratio mode is particularly inspiring. Is it doing anything amazing? No, it's just cropping in on the top and the bottom of the photo. But really, whatever it takes to inspire you, I think is definitely worth something. And again, this camera is fun, even with all of its issues. So, who is this camera for? Personally, I think that this camera is made for content creators, especially people who are getting into it for the first time. Let's say that you are shooting on your iPhone mostly for Instagram or YouTube. I think that this is gonna be a stellar upgrade. Even if you have something kind of like the Canon M50, this is gonna be a camera that you can grow into because it's Lumix and they don't skimp out on any features. You have things like full frame or 6K open gate, as well as all this new stuff coming out with the real-time LUTs. I think that even though the S9 is quirky, I do think that there's a lot of you guys that can benefit from a camera like this. And honestly, again, at the end of the day, it's just a fun camera to use. I hope that you all enjoyed walking around Japan with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.